Part of me is died. And what would and part of me wants to hide. The path that's Once I knew where to look for you. Once, but not anymore.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to introduce the band, and then we'll bring them out. So, Marketa Irglova and Glen Hansard came to prominence together, starring in 2007 once, and winning Best Original Song Academy Award for Falling Slowly in 2008. The One soundtrack garnered 2 Grammy nominations, with Irglova and Hansard continuing their collaborations as The Swell Season. They went on to release the critically acclaimed album Strict Joy in 2009 and toured the world before branching out into solo careers. In 2012, Once the musical debuted and went on to be nominated for 11 Tony Awards, winning 8, including Best Musical. It ran for 3 years on Broadway and is currently still in production as a touring musical. Over the course of the last decade, Once in all its iterations has become a modern classic and a cultural touchstone, being referenced in everything from The Simpsons to Ted Lasso. Since the success of Once, Irglova has released 3 studio albums, the most recent being 2022's Lila, recorded in Iceland with her husband and music producer Sturla Mio Thorsen, and reflects on Irglova's journey from her Girl from a Movie track on that album, status to wife, mother, and artist. Hansard, previously the frontman of Irish band The Frames fans in the house, has released 5 solo studio albums, including the 2023 All That Was East Is West of Me Now. In 2022, he toured as part of Eddie Vedder's Earthlings band. And that same year, the Swell season reconvened for a handful of shows and ended up back in the studio working on their first full-length album, again here. In 16 years, Forward features 8 intimate and heartfelt tracks recorded in Iceland with many of the band's longtime collaborators, and highlights the duo's enduring artistic bond with a mature sound that is at once emotionally raw and musically precise. Please put your hands together to welcome Marketa Irglova and Glen Hansard to the stage. Well, I was going to save the surprise for later, but you might have noticed Glen brought his guitar. So you're all in for a treat because over here we have a little area where they are going to perform for you at the end of the Q&A. I know, it's very exciting. So I know the title of your new album is Forward, which is probably the direction you're most interested in looking. However, I'm going to bring you back to Once, given we just saw that. So just for some context, the film was made, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like $150,000 in total and over 3 weeks or so. And it's directed by John Carney, who had made a few films before that and then a few since, including Sing Street and Begin Again. And it's a film that, like I mentioned to you before, almost everyone here had seen already and is very just evocative. People remember exactly where they were when they saw this film. I was telling a friend of mine who's nothing to do with film, and she's like, oh, that's the one I bawled my eyes out on the plane, like from start to finish. I'm like, yeah, that's the one. And I'm just wondering, maybe can you start by telling us, how did you first meet? Did you meet on the film? You met before the film because you already had these tracks. Can you tell us your origin story? And as well, yeah, just how the film, how you came to meet John, how it happened.
Well, John Carney was a member of my band, The Frames. He was the first bass player in my band, and he had always had an interest in filmmaking. And about a year into our career, basically, we had the chat where he was like, look, I really need to go make films. It's just something I have to do. I have to follow it. And how me and John met was we met in a cafe on Grafton Street, and John was watching me play music on the street, and I auditioned him by bringing him to that music store that we meet in, the two characters, and John played bass for me, and that was kind of his audition for my band. He was doing a lot of slap bass. He was kind of into Mark King and funk music, and I was like, well, look, there'll be none of that in my songs. But he was like, oh, okay, I'll give it a go. But he definitely considered himself a way better musician than I deserved. But for years, he had this idea of a film script called Busker, and it was kind of loosely based on his experience watching me play and watching me and my friends and how we would interact. And he came to me, he was like, I want to talk more about, tell me stories about what happened on the street. And we would kind of talk for a couple of years about this idea. And then he said, look, I'm getting closer to making this film. Cillian Murphy has agreed to play the guy, which is great. But I want to ask you to give me some songs. There was one song of mine he really liked, Say To Me Now, the song that opens the film. And he said, I want you to write me some songs, and Cillian's gonna teach Cillian the song. So I met Cillian a few times, and we, interacted with the music, because Cillian's a musician, he's in a band, songwriter. And John was gonna cast a 35-year-old Eastern European woman, a non-specifically Eastern European woman. And he said, you know anyone who plays piano? And I had met Mar's parents in 2002, in Valmes, in Mar's hometown. Mar and I had jammed, had played a bit, we'd done a few gigs together. We had toured in Czech Republic. Mar would join me on stage. And I said, I know a girl in Czech Republic who's a brilliant piano player and a brilliant singer. She might be perfect for the role. And so John met with Mar. We did a gig in Dublin as kind of Mar's audition. We did a gig in Whelan's. John came to see the two of us play, and afterwards he was like, the chemistry, the musical chemistry between the two of you is just phenomenal. Mar's definitely so he rewrote the part for Mar. So that was Mar and Cillian for the shortest moment. It was going to be Mar and Cillian in the film, and then Cillian got offered Sunshine, the Danny Boyle film. That's how I remember it anyway, and he had to take that role because it was a great offer. Cillian was still kind of coming up, and he was really finding his feet. And then John was kind of devastated, and he came one afternoon, he came out to our place, out to where I was living, and he said, I've had an idea. Rather than let the film go, why don't you two play the characters? He said, because I saw the chemistry between you on stage, and I think that that's going to be what will carry the film. So then suddenly I was playing the role that was loosely based on me, which felt very odd. But it was great because John said, I'd rather have two musicians who can hardly act than two actors who can hardly sing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so that was kind of the beginning of it. Mara and I had met in Czech Republic, as I said, with her parents. There was an immediate rapport when Mara played piano with me. It kind of opened up my songs in a way that I hadn't ever considered before. It was an immediate musical partnership that just made total sense. And we made a record in Prague in 4 days. We went to a studio called Sono Studios, and we recorded all of these songs in a very brief period, and that became the soundtrack to Once. Yeah.
4 days. That's wild.
Was it 5 days?
Either way, impressive. So tell me then, with that, Genesis, and then you kind of subbing in for Killian and playing yourself, what was the writing process like? Was it all kind of there before you started in production, or given that you loosely based on yourselves, like how much input did you have, and either in advance or during production? I'm going to make you speak at some point.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I kind of missed your question.
Just like,
it felt like it was many layered.
Were you involved in the writing of the script in any way, or was it really like fully scripted before you started shooting?
Oh, it's a good question. No, it was. Now, John would argue that it was fully scripted, obviously, but in the same way that Mike Leigh would claim that he wrote Naked, whereas clearly it was David Thewlis who had written that character. And there's a lot of debate about it, because with Once there was a script, yeah, there was, and we did follow it. But then John would also say, look, find your way to. Here's what I'm trying to get you to say, but find your way to it yourselves. So ad-libbing was encouraged, and also something I remember was that I sincerely asked John. I said, please don't put me in a bad film. Like, I just don't want to be in a bad film. Like, and what I meant by that is if I'm a bad actor, like if I'm not a good actor, please fire me, because I don't want to be in a bad film. I don't want to let you down, and I don't want to let myself down. I'm a musician, first and foremost. And he said, look, I'll be honest with you, you're not great. And this is our. He said, both of you are really good. You're very convincing when you sing together. The acting's okay. So what I've decided to do, this was kind of late on in the editing. He said, what I've decided to do is I'm going to use all the songs. I'm going to use the full song and keep the acting to a minimum. So when you look at Once, it's actually text-wise, it's quite minimal. There's not a lot of text in it. There was originally in the script, and John edited out a lot of the text, and so what you're left with is the bare minimum of text and a lot of music.
Well, for what it's worth, I think you are both very strong actors, and I think everyone here will agree. I don't think you could feel the things you feel from this film if the performances weren't there, so John was wrong. Okay, so you know what I love about this film, watching it again, I realized, is there are no phones, there are no smartphones, right? Because it's just on the cusp, just before the ubiquity of smartphones, which makes all of those kind of chance meetups and the missed meetup towards the end so extra devastating and truly like romantic, really, in a way that you couldn't recreate that today, right, in this modern world. And anyway, wondering how, and we were talking backstage, like you hadn't seen it for a number of years, and I don't think, Glenn, you'd seen it either for some time. So what's it like when you did see it most recently? What's it like looking back? It's almost been 20 years. Like, what are your, and you don't mind me getting personal, you guys got into a relationship soon after, right? I mean, this is very, must be a really kind of heady, weird time of your life to look back on. How is it? Tell us about it. Marketa, you start.
Oh.
Hello. Does it work? It works. Okay.
It's going really for the, jugular, this one.
Well, looking back at it, or even seeing it on the screen there, it definitely brings up a lot of emotions still, and I think it always will, because it was such a special time in my life. It like literally sort of decided my future, I think, without me knowing it at the time. At the time, it just felt like I was sort of given this gift of an amazing adventure. I was in high school, and I got to spend a month out of that year in high school in Dublin making a movie with people that I really loved, artistically and on a personal level. So it felt like this amazing, super unlikely thing to happen to any 17-year-old, but especially me, because I grew up in a small town, and the chances of that happening were like really, really small. So I thought, well, it must be somehow fate, that made certain things happen that were sort of put in place, almost leading to this moment, and that moment leading to the next. And it kind of, besides kind of putting me on a musical journey in my life, I think it also gave me an outlook on life that's quite special to me, in terms of like, I kind of got to see magic happening, things that shouldn't be happening are happening, and I'm like, how is this, why me, and I sort of realized that, okay, this is cool, this means that like anything is possible, so suddenly I was walking through life with this openness to kind of like, just, things happening, you just go and you go for it, you kind of do what feels right, and then things will work out. And that mindset sort of brought me to a lot of great places in my life. And so I feel so grateful for that time and for everything that it has given me. And looking back at the screen and that girl, like, it feels like me and it feels like not me at the same time, I feel like, actually, I just teared up looking at that shot of me in the window and the camera sort of panning out. Like, it was unexpected. Like, I don't know why I teared up. It just, suddenly I felt like a little sad for that girl or something. I don't know why. It's probably multi-layered, but I think it's good to have things that make you feel things, in your life one way or another. And this movie will always be a special thing. I got to watch it with my daughters probably 5 years ago, and that would have been the first time I'd seen it in a long time. So it's nice to see something you did 20 years ago now. For me, I'm 37. So this when we acted in this, it was 20 years ago, and to feel proud of it still, and to be able to kind of, happy with the outcome is great. I'm really glad.
I didn't realize you were just 17. Yeah. That's young. So listen, I'm talking to. We'll need to move along to make sure we have time for your audience questions. But Glenn, do you want to say anything? How was it for you looking back?
I mean, it's abstract. It almost feels like a different lifetime. They're two different people there. But there's, of course, they're us, but they're different. I feel a kind of remove from it in a lot of ways. Like I still feel very emotionally attached, and it was such an amazing part of my life. But I've moved on. I guess like Marketa has too. Just moved on and done other things. So yeah, it's great to look back on it. It's great to have that moment in our lives that was so. And I remember the conversations around, should the two characters, because it was kind of all, John, we were kind of making it up as we were going along a little bit too. Should the characters get together? Should they kiss? And all of this, it was kind of a question. And I remember we fought hard for the fact that this girl she's kind of the star of the film, that it's her resolve that actually makes the film great, as it makes the story great, that she keeps the line, whereas the guy is just a guy. And he wants to go back to his girlfriend, but he also just, wants to be with her too. So it's the film is really about the female character, and so I just remember conversations, particularly the last day when we were in the airport. We had about 2 months after the film had been finished shooting, we did like 2 days of pickups where John wanted to sort of fix a couple of things, and he was like, I really want us to do a kiss scene in the airport, that there's a moment, and we were like, no, please don't. And do you remember that big debate we set? We had a coffee, and we were like, if this film has any chance of living or having a life, they don't kiss. If we put a kiss in it, then it's just another romantic film that, you know, the ribbon gets tied at the end. And I remember when we did the screenings around America, because we did a bunch of screenings, like, you know, little small indie cinemas all over, and we traveled and we played, and this feels quite nostalgic because we did this every day for a couple of months, or maybe a month, and people would say, why didn't they kiss? And we'd always be like, exactly.
About to be 20 years, and then you'll know. So we're going to talk briefly about your new album before you perform songs from it. And just as that, we have a clip because Marketa directed a kind of mid-length documentary called The Forward Journey about the making of the album. So maybe we'll just start with that, and then you can speak more about the album and the process. This is just part of a song called Pretty Stories, which features lead vocals by Marketa and with shots in Iceland, and we'll tell you more why it's shot in Iceland, for those who may not know. If you could roll the clip, please. Thank you. Can you really smoke inside in Reykjavik still? Or Glen
No.
can. Glen can.
No, that's not a cigarette. That's just
So maybe, Marketa, can you tell us a little bit about, so you live in heaven for some time in Reykjavik. Can you tell us, so you have a studio there, kind of attached to your house, and that's where you recorded this album, right? Yeah, maybe tell us about that, and also how you guys came back together to record this.
Yeah, my husband is a studio engineer and producer, so after we met, we were talking about it would be nice to have a creative space for me to get to record and for him to be the engineer and producer. So we built this space. I just kind of participated in maybe like decorating it, choosing furniture and stuff like that. But he took care of like the studio stuff, which is kind of elaborate. But now we have this beautiful studio which is close to the sea and looks over these mountains. So it's like really special, huge windows. It's a nice place to kind of create because it's not a dark sort of, place that you never know what time it is, like a lot of studios can be. So I love working there, and I thought since we were doing gigs together again, it just felt nice, the idea of having like 1 or 2 new songs, for it to be more than like kind of a nostalgia tour, even though we love playing the older songs from the movie and from our previous records. I thought it would feel nice to have at least 1 new song to kind of put out ahead of the tour. So we decided to do that in Iceland because, well, my kids were still kind of small, and I'm so used to working there that Glen was so kind to just make it easiest for me, and traveled over to record, and we just had so much fun that initial kind of 4 or 5 day period that we allocated to it, that we decided to do more, and eventually the decision was made to turn whatever material we were working on into a record. But it was at the beginning we were just kind of seeing what happens and what we end up with. But we just, the moment we were in the studio, we found ourselves so creative that the songs just kept coming, and before we knew it, we had like 20 songs that we were suddenly like, okay, which should we focus on for the album, because they couldn't all be on it. So it was a nice problem to have. And Glen came with his wife and his son for the second recording session, and we made a bit of it was like half holiday, half work, a lot of hanging out, playing with the kids, making fires, and it was just nice. I think the nature of how the recording happened went into the general mood of the record, which is kind of just relaxed and full of friendship, and our family sings on the songs, some of them, and yeah, I'm very proud of how it came together.
And you see that in the documentary as well, like everyone enjoying meals together. It is really lovely. Where can people see the documentary, by the way? Do you know?
At the moment, it's not really available anywhere.
Oh, okay.
We did do like an online screening of it for people that are registered into our fan club, I guess, called the Hoover Repair Shop. We got new management, and they have like lots of great ideas how to get our music out there, and especially how to let people know what we're doing, because there's just so much noise to cut through these days. So we have, like, on our website, you can sign up for Hoover Repair Club, and then you get notified when fun things are happening. So
there you go. You all have to do that if you haven't already. Okay, so I just want to make sure we have time for a few audience questions, if you don't mind, and then we'll hear some songs. So if you have a question, I see one kind of in the middle here. Maybe someone in a blue shirt, gentleman. If you can just wait for the mic, please. Thank you.
Sorry to go back to a question about the film, but the film and the musical have very different variants on the scene where guy asks the girl, so do you love him? So in the film, we don't know. Technically, we don't know what she says. I think we all probably know what she says. And in the musical, they do this kind of brilliant sort of surtiles at the top of the stage. So during the filming, was there a point where either the director or yourselves thought, like, let's express this, or was it always sort of like, let's keep it to ourselves and people can kind of like discover it? And then when you saw the musical, did you know that they were going to change that part of it, and how did you feel about it?
I remember John saying that he wanted it to be the way it is in the movie, that for it not to be obvious. But I thought, like, isn't it obvious anyway? Like, it's kind of like like it seemed like people are gonna piece it together, anyway. But it isn't obvious to everyone, which is cool. I think it's nice that there's a little bit of mystery to it when you're watching the movie, and we didn't really have a lot of say over the musical. We kind of got the feeling that they didn't really want us involved that much. They were kind of doing their own thing, which is, you know, natural and right, probably. And I don't think either me or Glenn would have felt like it was our business to kind of have things to say about the script, you know, maybe about the songs and stuff, but yeah, we weren't consulted.
John really liked that moment in Lost in Translation, where Scarlett Johansson leans in to Bill Murray, or Bill Murray leans in and says something to her, and nobody knows what it is. And I remember John referencing that moment when we were up on the hillside. He just said, "Answer him in Czech, and just leave it there. We won't explain."
Thank you. I think let's see. There's someone there, a woman in a red shirt. Yeah, if you just wait, the mic's on its way to you. Thank you.
Speaking of the musical, I was reading that you guys are working on a new musical with one of our Canadians, David Haynes. Can you talk a little bit about what's been happening with that and the process that you've started off, or if you've started anything with that so far?
Yeah, actually, one of the producers on Once, Robert Cole, is also doing this one that you're mentioning. So that's where the connection was made with us, like where Bob approached Glenn and I whether we'd be up for doing the music, and well, we were kind of in the studio at the time that came up, so it seemed like we were already kind of in the groove together musically, so it seemed like a fun thing to get to work on together. And at the time, it wasn't decided who the director or screenwriter would be, so that kind of developed over time, and we actually lost the job, and then we're rehired.
Sting was interested.
Yeah, it's a you know, this industry is savage. But you know, I'm certainly happy to be back on the project. We'll see what happens. By the time we were rehired, we were kind of in the middle of our album release campaign, so we're kind of busy with that at the moment, but also writing songs on the road and whenever we can. So, like, personally, I love musical theater. I have since I was a kid. My first musical love was Jesus Christ Superstar. So over the years when I was making my own records, I realized that my songs are kind of more musically anyway, so maybe that's kind of the area I should try to kind of move myself to. So we'll see what happens.
Stay open and, you know, see what comes. Marketa is really good at writing songs that kind of have a very lyrical direction. I tend to let things come in a bit more, kind of, they sort of aerial in a bit more, but Mara has a great discipline with lyrics, and so I guess Mara will be leading the charge on whatever that ends up being.
Mara in charge. I'm just gonna give that to your new marketing folks. Okay, so many, but we only have one left. Okay, sir, over here in the front row, just the mic's on its way.
Hi, I just want to say, I'll stand for this. Once really changed my life, so I want to say thank you. You guys both have gorgeous voices, and so my question is, for your latest record, what made you guys come back and collaborate once more? Because you both have a great dynamic musically, and I Leave Everything to You is my favorite track on the album. And I just wanted to ask, after such a long period of time in between albums, what made this record worth coming back all these years later for? Thank you.
Well, I think that if Glenn hadn't called me and asked if I wanted to do concerts in 2023, just after the COVID, I think, that whole period, if he hadn't called me and asked if I wanted to do more gigs, and we didn't go out and did more gigs together, I don't think we would have gone back to the studio together. The impulse for the studio time was definitely the tour. And the impulse for the tour, I still don't know what it was, really.
I just missed Mara, and I as musicians, the best way to see your friends is to book a few gigs. And so I was like, do you want to do some gigs? And we did a small handful. It was like just a small handful of gigs around America in the middle of summer. It was lovely. I remember it just being a really enjoyable couple of weeks. And Marketa said, oh, I've got a friend coming tonight. I'm going to do a duet with him. And I was like, great. And it was this young guy. Was he Canadian? Corey? Is he? Oh, I think he's American. But he was gonna, Mara and him were gonna do this duet of a song, and I was like, great. And so in soundcheck, he showed up, and they both sang this song, "The People We Used to Be." And I was like, what's that song? And she's like, oh, I wrote this song years ago. And I was like, I want a duet with you on that song. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah, we should record that song. I'm sorry, Corey, but that was kind of, in a way, seeing a record, because that song really struck me as a kind of an important song in terms of our story, but also the song isn't about us. The song, according to Mara, is not about me and Mara. It's about her and someone else. But it seemed to sort of ring true for us, and so we did record it together, and that was kind of like, I was like, we should record this song, and what for? Well, maybe we should make a record. Maybe we should just sort of go and see what happens. And the same way they're going on tour was just, let's go and see what happens. And so once we start playing music, and then there was a great creative buzz on the tour. I think I'd start writing the song "Great Weight Is Lifted," and then I had a few ideas, and we went over. And of course, it's always lovely to get an invite to Iceland. It's a lovely thing. So I went to Iceland with my wife and family, and Marketa and her family, and we just had a lovely hang. And it just seemed really obvious that this would be a beautiful chapter. So why not record all these songs and see what comes of it? And here we are on tour with a record just came out a week ago. And so it's amazing.
Thank you. That's the perfect segue. So I'm going to leave the stage. You're going to make your way over there, and thank you, and enjoy, everybody.